I think Vincent might have gotten caught up, so I'll go ahead and kick us off here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining for our monthly reports and updates meeting. This month, we will have a presentation from Judge Elizabeth Leith with the Denver Probate Court. I will just go ahead and kick it over to Judge Leith for her presentation. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Hopefully everyone can hear me. And I'm going to try to share my screen. If it doesn't work, I did email it to Adam just in case. My name is Elizabeth Leith, and I serve as the Denver Probate Judge in Denver. And I've been doing this since July 1 of 2011 now. And part of the probate court docket has to do with mental health cases. We also do the guardian and conservatorships for Denver County, as well as the trust and estate cases. So as part of my role in overseeing the mental health dockets, I have created a partnership with the criminal court division for the Denver District Court because, as everyone probably understands, is that there's a huge number of folks that have criminal cases and they suffer from mental illnesses, and that keeps them or prohibits them from going to trial on their criminal cases. What happens is that they get bound up in this endless loop of evaluations and waiting, and they're still in custody. There's a serious lack of beds down at Colorado Mental Health Institute in Pueblo, which is a state facility that's designated to treat their conditions and try to restore them to competency so they can proceed to trial on their criminal cases. My understanding is that the backlog had been pretty much eliminated. And then when the COVID pandemic hit and they had to start restricting admissions because of that, then the backlog increased dramatically again. So that's kind of where they're at right now. There's a number of programs that are going on to try to alleviate that. And one of them is this particular program that we started here in Denver. I'll see if I can share it. Maybe not. Can anybody, can you see this?
Yep.
Yes, okay, so we're calling it the REACH docket to review, evaluate, and assist community-based behavioral health services. And it's a collaboration between the Denver District Court, the Denver Probate Court, and community-based services and providers. This particular docket is actually a component of the adult treatment court, which Denver District Court has had for quite a long time. So that judge has always, there's always been a judge on that. Sometimes it's a magistrate. Currently, a judge sits on that docket. Her name is Lisa Arnolds, and she runs a mental health treatment court, the drug treatment court, and then we also created this particular component, the REACH docket, to add on to the different dockets that she oversees over there. And this is in response to the number of individuals who are diagnosed with mental illnesses and disabilities, who were found incompetent to proceed to trial and who are still in custody. And the other thing I want to point out for this particular docket, it is just not people with just mental illnesses. They can have substance abuse issues. There can be co-occurring disorders. There can be disabilities related to intellectual disabilities. Some of the individuals on this docket are older, they have dementia, they have physical issues as well. So we're trying to address all of the needs that these people might have that prevent them from going to trial, but keep them in custody. It's designed to promote community safety and reduce recidivism by hooking these people up with community-based services so that when they're released from custody, they're back into care, so that the conditions that gave rise to the offenses that led to the incarceration are no longer present. So the goals of the docket at this point are, first and foremost, to promote community safety. No one wants to see someone not being cared for in such a manner that they're going to commit new offenses for whatever reason. We want to reduce recidivism. We want to try to break that cycle of people coming into custody, being released, reoffending because their underlying conditions haven't been treated or addressed. And then we're also trying to break that cycle of people going in and out of the emergency room, which is a significant cost to the community as well, and basically trying to support community partner in those programs so that the people can be absorbed and accommodated in community treatment rather than trying to deal with them through the criminal justice system. We're hoping to decrease the amount of time these individuals spend in custody, and I'll get to that in a minute. We're trying to reduce the pressure on the Colorado Mental Health Institute in Pueblo. There's one in Fort Logan. We're trying to reduce pressure on the jails and prisons to identify these people who can be more safely and better served through the community-based services while restoration services are pending. We're seeking alternatives to incarceration for these folks when it's appropriate and safe for them to be in the community, and to promote cost-effective and appropriate treatment for them. And then ultimately, hopefully reducing the burden on the criminal justice system as well as taxpayers. So how are we, going to go about doing this? And I apologize, I already see that my numbering system is off. But anyway, so the people that are in our program right now are charged in the district court level with either a class 4, 5, or 6 felony as the highest charge. They're found incompetent to proceed, and they're in custody. There's also a comparable program being developed for the Denver County Court, which handles some felonies and all of the misdemeanor cases. So we're trying to work in tandem with them as well. The cases that are falling outside of these general guidelines are considered on a case-by-case basis. So the criminal judge who's assigned to the case can request that it be reassigned over to the REACH docket. But generally, if a case comes in and it falls within these general parameters, there's automatically being an order of reassignment. The presiding criminal judge can choose to keep the case if they want to. But generally they're going over to Judge Arnold's docket for her to manage at this point. So once an individual is assigned to the docket, the defendant and all of their related cases are evaluated by a multiple disciplinary team. So that is to determine if there are alternative resources available in the community to address those needs, and also to resolve those criminal cases while, again, promoting community safety, because that is, we're always keeping that in mind. Victims' rights issues, community safety issues. This is not something that's designed to just kick somebody out of jail and put them back on the streets. That's not what this is about at all. And the members of the team work to remove any barriers to either inpatient restoration for those people who really can be restored and stand trial, or to identify people who are never going to be able to stand trial under our current law and do need to be released back into the community by statute. So we have at this point representatives from the Denver District Court Criminal Division involved, Denver Probate Court, pretrial services, the Bridges program. There's the CBER program, which is the community-based restoration program through WellPower, the forensic navigators who also work with evaluations on all of these individuals while they're in custody. The Director of Court Services for the Department of Human Services. We have the Denver City Attorney's Office involved because we're basically trying to move these people from the criminal system back out into the civil system. We have the treating forensic psychiatrist for the Denver Detention Center and the Denver County Jail, representatives from Wellpower, which used to be known as the Mental Health Center of Denver. We have the Denver Public Defender's Office and the Denver District Attorney's Office as well. So the way it works is once the case is reassigned, Judge Arnold holds this docket. At this point, twice a month, there's about 20, 25 individuals on each docket. And at this point, what they have is one or more evaluations that have already been done in the context of trying to determine if an individual is competent to proceed to trial. Those are done through the auspices of Colorado Mental Health Institute in Pueblo generally, and they work off of that and any other information that they have. If additional screening is needed, psychiatrist at the jail can take care of that, and he can weigh in on whether or not an individual meets the civil criteria for a civil certification for mental health, which basically means that they can have involuntary medications or mental health treatment ordered, which is what is overseen by the Denver Probate Court. If they have physical issues or like if they have like an individual, an intellectual disability that's preventing them from going to trial, everyone in this team can identify those particular issues and then start to reach out and find what kind of community services are appropriate to treat or to support that individual out into the community. The DA and the PD involvement is critical because they're in charge of determining whether or not the criminal charges can be either suspended or dismissed or held pending further determination. They can hammer out any details with respect to bond if that's needed. So there's all of that goes on. The one thing that we're finding though at this point is that we're able to more quickly address and identify and address these needs on these individuals because all of the people are there at the same time, and different people will chime in on a particular defendant and say, oh yeah, we're familiar with him or her from other incarcerations that they've had, or the psychiatrist that will say, yeah, I've seen that person before because they've been in the jail before, and then I'm familiar with their diagnosis and what their medication needs might be. Of the evaluators or the navigators will say, what services might be available to them and can basically slot those individuals for services. The probate court gets involved again because we oversee the mental health docket and also because we oversee guardianships for people who meet statutory criteria for that. And if a person is so incapacitated that they meet that criteria, individuals on the team will work to locate either the public, a private guardian, or maybe the public guardian office to assist that person, and then locate other services that are needed for that person to succeed in the community and get treatment for whatever their issues are. Judge Arnold is working on a program also to try to have evaluations come through more quickly and to further lessen the time that a person is in custody and waiting for evaluations and services. And the time that some of these people are in custody and waiting, it can drag on into years. So we're trying to reduce that to a period of months rather than years, and then trying to move these people through. But really, the ultimate goal is to provide them community mental health services or services related to their various disabilities or medical needs, and then find accommodations for them that will result in them not reoffending or being homeless or being in and out of the emergency room all the time, and you know, getting a better standard of living for them. So that's pretty much what we're doing. Is there any questions about that?
Hi, Judge Leith. Thank you so much for sharing your work. And sorry I wasn't here at the very beginning. And thank you, Adam, for getting you started. Tell us a little bit about what is challenging and what are barriers to access for folks for.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, the barriers I think are common to just about everyone that I talk to. I mean, you know, there's a lack of beds. Nursing is a problem. We were able to take a tour earlier this week of Denver Health Medical Center. They have a whole floor right now that for psychiatric services they're not using because they don't have enough staff. I think there's a similar situation down in Pueblo. I mean, the staffing issue is real. I think that with all of, but there's so many people working on this right now that I think beds are starting to open up, and services are really beginning to coalesce and gel. One of the things that we're taking advantage of for this particular docket that I'm working on is that WellPower started a community assertive treatment program that we're trying to take full advantage of. It requires someone to qualify for a mental health certification, and they take that person into the program. They provide case management services, mental health services, medication services, with the backing of the probate court authority to compel the treatment if it comes to that. We usually don't. Usually people, once they are stabilized, are able to start thinking again and understand what their situation is, and that everybody is actually trying to help them. So that's one of the programs we're taking advantage of. Another one is the Public Guardian Office. It also has been, it's coming on 2 years right now. They're full. So we're trying to, again, take full advantage of all of the programs that are coming online that we can take. The CBER program is a community-based treatment through WellPower. That's a voluntary program. So it's really important that individuals who are willing to go into voluntary treatment, they have a program for that. If they're not quite there yet, but they meet the criteria and they need involuntary orders, we have a program for that. So we're just trying to take advantage of everything that the community has to offer, as well as support new programs that are in development to take advantage of those as well.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat from Commander Gitz from the Boulder Sheriff's Office, and he asks, how long have you been doing this?
We started this in March. So we've been doing it since March. We've expanded from a pilot in January of 10 defendants with their associated cases. And now we've opened it up to the 4, 5, and 6 felonies with additional referrals as they come in. And then we're probably going to expand it again because we think it's going really well. And it also takes pressure off of the other criminal judges so they can just manage their regular criminal dockets without trying to figure out what to do with the people who are incompetent to proceed. Because with each criminal judge, there's a steep learning curve on that. And of course, the plethora of services that are available, that become available, the interaction between the civil system and the criminal system. There's this really steep learning curve on that. So being able to train Judge Arnold's on that, who already has an affinity for this sort of thing, has been a blessing. And it's worked out really, really well. So we're trying to just distill that down into having basically a one-stop shop for all of these cases.
Thank you. Any other questions from folks on the call?
Okay, I just wanted to add too that I think it's really important that we start intertwining our civil system into the criminal justice system. It's been such a stark division for such a long time. And of course, the goal really needs to be to have our civil mental health system support all of these people to the point where they're mostly in the civil system instead of mostly in the criminal system. And I'm hoping that I can use the probate court to help bridge that gap and to be the go-between through education and services and coordination to really support people back out into the community and use all of the tools that the civil system and the probate court has available to support folks in the civil system and in the community.
Yes, thank you for that. We're very interested in seeing the continuing development of a civil system that will keep people well and healthy in their communities preventatively of justice involvement, for starters, as well as redirected away from the forensic system. So,
Right. I think we'll get there. It takes time though.
Somebody is formulating a question, incomplete question in the text area.
To what extent are the guardians?
Yes, it's Sonia. I'm sorry, I'm driving, but I'm really, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm really curious to know, to what extent are the guardians facing just the challenge of finding, like, I feel like the missing piece often for a lot of our persons with most complex needs is appropriate housing. So are you getting feedback what the challenges are from the guardians, the appointed guardians?
Right. You know, the guardians are pretty adept at finding places or placements for people. And of course, the challenge is that the more debilitated a person is, the easier it is to find a bed for them. And I think that's really sad personally. So we're trying to work really, really hard with WellPower and those types of community providers that provide beds for people who aren't sick and dying. Right? If you're sick and dying, we can find you a bed. If you're not sick and dying, it's harder to find you a bed, right? So, and that's kind of the area that we're working on, is to try to figure out, you know, where we can house people appropriately. And I know that there's a lot of well, I don't want to say housing, but there's beds available through places like WellPower. They run some housing. So does the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, those types of community organizations. And so the guardians work with all of them to find the beds that are needed. At this point, we're successful in finding beds because we're still working on the low-hanging fruit, if you will. We're still working on people who are sick enough or debilitated enough that they qualify and they're eligible for placement. But then once we move through that population, I think it's going to be even a little bit harder. But then, I mean, Vince just told us, you know, this morning of programs that are probably going to be coming online that involve bed space for that next tier of people. So we might luck out and it might coincide with that. So I remain very hopeful and positive that as we move through the different populations of people that we're trying to work with, that we will be able to appropriately house them.
Thank you, Judge Leith. I appreciate your optimism, and we'll try to be infected by that. And another question in the text from Jen Schnoes, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is do you have information on your model that can be found online or shared with the group by email?
So the model really is the Miami-Dade, Florida, Miami-Dade County in Florida. It's that model. And he has a website. Judge Leithman does have a website.
Yeah, I've got, actually, if that's what it is, I can put a link in the chat right now because we've got all of that stuff on our website as well.
Yeah. The interesting part of it is that I kind of came to this independently because I didn't know Judge Leithman. And then after I started putting this program together, of course, then I was like, oh my gosh, there's all this information out there. He's been doing it for 20 years to great success. So basically what we're doing is pretty much the same thing that he's doing it. They're doing it also up in Fort Collins. Judge Blanco is running a program on a smaller scale because they don't have as many criminal defendants up there. But it's the same sort of thing. It's basically you put everyone afflicted on the one criminal docket if you can, and then have all of the providers come to the staffings and weigh in and then hammer out a plan to move people back out into the community in a safe and appropriate manner. And, we don't use any law that we don't already have on the books. I mean, that's the other part. People need to understand that, we're not doing anything differently. We're just using it in a different way, if that makes sense. And we're taking the same law that we've always had on the books, and we're just using what we have and trying to leverage it to the max, so that we can use it for the benefit of everybody.
And with apologies, I'm having trouble getting that link to the Miami model to work. I'll look into that and I'll send it along by email to the group.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that.
No problem.
All right.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Judge Leith. I imagine you're open to questions by follow-up email from anybody on the group.
Of course.
Thanks so much for the work you're doing and for your sharing of that today.
Thank you for hosting and allowing me to tell everyone what we're trying to do. I think it's really positive.
Yeah, we've got a couple more minutes. If anybody else has updates to share, I'll just mention that the work of the new Colorado Jail Standards Commission began this week. And a moment ago, we had Megan Baker, who's chairing that commission, on the line. I think she had to drop off. But those are a whole series of open meetings. I think that the commission will be meeting 17 times over some period of time. And anybody who's got an interest in jail standards or input is encouraged to share that input and follow along with the work of the commission. I'm on the commission as well. I also just wanted to mention that, we're really interested in keeping these reports and updates going, and welcome presentations from other folks on the call if they'd like to share their work, to let me and Adam know, and we'll get you on the calendar for one of our upcoming meetings. And Adam, I'm hoping you can tell us who we've got lined up for August.
Yes, so we'll have a presentation from Kevin Kelly with the Department of Public Health and Environment discussing the AIDS Center.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we've got the next 3 months or so lined up, and open spots after that. Anybody else have any updates they would like to share with the group? I'm hearing none. We will let you go so that you can get on with your busy days. Thank you all so much for your work and for joining us here. Look forward to reconnecting with you again soon.